Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and I got on the extra special private, or quote-unquote private, server that was available to some of the streamers as well as content creators. And this is kind of what the beta is going to look like. Since I'm on the server, I'm able to test some of the stuff. There's a lot of endgame content that is available to test, and one of them is going to be the whole Covenant abilities, Soulbind system, which we talked about in a previous video, as well as Conduits. So in this video, I kind of want to explain to you what these different Soulbinds are, how do they work, what are Conduits, how they interact together, and try to explain it to you in the most layman's way possible. So beginning the whole Covenant thing, we have a couple of different abilities when it comes to your Covenants. We have a Covenant specific ability, and Venthyr, which is what we have to test here, have Doorway of Shadows. Every ability is going to be different for all Covenants. Venthyr have this nifty teleport ability, and then you have class specific abilities. Now each class has 4 Covenants to choose from and 4 Covenant abilities. When you go with Venthyr, you get Fallen Order, which summons these monks on a 3-minute cooldown. This ability has a much longer cooldown, and the monks are kind of stuck to one area, so you want to use it in a spot where you don't have to move away from the boss too far. Blizzard decided for Shadowlands they want to try to balance this out as best as they can without really having to make these Covenants similar to a talent choice. And there's quite a bit of push in the community to try to saying, okay, Blizzard, it's going to be a nightmare to balance. There's almost no way you're going to be able to do this. Please just change it to where we can choose each Covenant ability. Because some of these are good in dungeons, some of these are good in raids, some of these are good in PvP. But Blizzard is pretty adamant about trying to make Covenants unique and special with their unique abilities. And even though some abilities are stronger in certain specific situations, they want to add other systems in order to create more balance. So let's say you didn't get the best Covenant ability for your class, but you got some awesome Soulbinds, which are kind of like passives. Think of them like a mixture of an extra talent bar, but also kind of like glyphs, like old school class glyphs to enhance your character. So that's what I really want to take a look at today. This is the big system that a lot of people are testing. This is right now available to warriors, monks, as well as mages. And I decided to go with monk, and it's kind of a complicated character just because some of the different glyphs or conduits are, well, some of them are just a flat damage increase, but a lot of them have quite a bit of text and quite a bit of value to them. I probably should have started with a mage or a warrior, but here we are. So taking a look at the Soulbinds, you get 3 of them. So you get 3 different souls for you to bind yourself. You unlock them the further you progress into the Covenant. So you'll start with 1 and eventually unlock a 2nd, and then eventually unlock a 3rd. So you'll have access to 3 different Soulbinds. Each Covenant has 3 Soulbinds with a variety of different passive effects and proc effects for you to play with. Take a look at a bunch of them, and we took a look at them at a previous video. We have Nadia. You guys will remember her because she has an ability where Doorway to Shadows can disorient enemies. So she's our selected Soulbind right now, and once we select this ability, when we try to use Doorway to Shadows, it now has a red circle around it, so any enemy in the area will be disoriented upon our popping up. So this could be useful in PvP or dungeons. It's kind of a cool way to change an ability, and that's what a lot of these Covenant abilities will do. They will affect your basic ability. So the Shield for Necrolords, the Vial for Kyrian, the Foxhorn for the Fae, it's going to, some of these Soulbinds, not all, some of them, are going to adjust the way that you might use your Covenant ability. Not class ability, but the Covenant special ability. And all of these Covenant, all the Soulbinds can be started from the very top, and you kind of work your way down, picking passives that you like. But take a look at Nadia. You'll look at, oh, which abilities do I like? Let's say I like the CC choice of Angel Footwork. You'll pick this up, We're not going to read this just because you're looking at all these passives to see what looks strong. You'll pick up Friends in Low Places. Then you're thinking, Familiar Predicaments, I don't really need it. But I like Extracting Preparations, right? In Dungeons Raids, this is quite a useful ability. So I'll grab this, and I'll grab this. And then all you have is just this down middle and Thrill Seeker. So now you have a character with a CC when you teleport. You get a little bit extra loot from world quests, and certain allies can offer you better gear or maybe better stuff to buy, like consumables out in the open world. Then your benefits of well-fed flasks and weapons are stronger for raids and dungeons, and now you have a little bit of a bloodlust type effect with Thrill Seeker every so often when you're in combat. So this seems kind of cool, right? You now have crafted a specific path for your Soulbind, and every one of these Soulbinds can be crafted any way you like. But also what there is to consider when you're looking at Soulbinds are the types of conduits. So damage conduits are going to allow you, or potency conduits are going to allow you to enhance the potency of your class and your role. So it'll enhance your healing abilities. It'll enhance your tanking abilities, usually to do more damage, but it will also enhance your damage abilities as a Windwalker. So when you are, let's say, looking at extracting preparations, you also got to look at that little conduit, right? So let's say you're decided to go for a character, this is what you want to do, and you're in this crossroad, you're like, wow, Dauntless Duelist, that seems really strong. However, the conduit you have ahead of it is a defensive conduit. So you'll get a defensive buff and 4% extra damage to the first enemy you attack, which could be quite useful on a boss. Or let's say you want to go for Familiar Predicaments, you're like, I don't really know if I could use it. I Windwalker, so I don't really cast a lot, but there is a Potency Conduit that can increase your overall damage. Or Extracting Preparations, which is great for dungeons and raids for value on the damage, but you'll have to pick up a Finesse Conduit, which is more utility stuff. So now instead of just looking for these passives, you're also looking for the type of conduit that is above them in order to try to influence your decision of which abilities you want to have. And conduits are basically like glyphs from back in the day. You can slot whatever you want to in them. So you kind of earn these conduits through a variety of content, and they work, again, exactly like old school glyphs. There's a variety of different conduits, and there are spec specific. Some of them are. Like this one technically can be slotted in. This is technically a Potency Conduit to enhance the value of your tank. Walk with the Ox. Abilities that grant Shuffle reduce the cooldown of invoking Nozawa, the Black Ox, by 5 seconds, and Nozawa's Stomp deals 10% more damage. That honestly sounds like a glyph. Or for Windwalker, you have Inner Fury. Fist of Fury damage is increased by 20%. Literally sounds like a glyph. Then we have another for a Potency Conduit for a healer. Life Cocoon increases healing over time effects by 15 additional percent, and this bonus lingers for additional 6 seconds after the shield is broken. I mean, also, that sounds like a glyph. So in a way, you could treat these conduits as glyph slots. So you can see Nadia has 1, 2, 3 damage glyph slots, in a sense, or Potency Conduits. We'll call them conduits. And then we have 1 and 2 endurance conduits, which are kind of like defensive glyphs. And then we have 1 and 2 finesse conduits, which are like utility glyphs. So this character is mostly set, as you can see, on enhancing your character. However, for like a tank, enhancing potency could be good, but usually potency means more damage or just more throughput. But a defensive endurance conduit could be better for taking big damage from bosses or having extra utility to deal with a variety of different PvE or even PvP situations. Just because it's endurance doesn't mean it's only for tanks. Like a healer can actually use it. Expel Harm heal increased by 20%. Yeah, as a Windwalker, you can actually totally grab it. So your ability of Expel Harm, which right now does very little, but with this buff, heals for quite a bit. It actually is quite effective. So you can actually stack it if you want to. Let's say you PvP a lot and Expel Harm is quite useful for you. This could actually be quite a good ability to some extent. So it's kind of like the way you customize the conduits or the soulbinds together with the conduits can give you a lot of different choices, whether you're a Windwalker, whether you're a tank, whether you are a DPS. So that's quite an extensive system. This is quite a lot, and you're not going to have access to all these conduits day one, right? Blizzard is going to make it so you earn them through a variety of content. We'll talk about how you earn them and some of my advice to Blizzard on how they plan on making you earn all these different conduits, right? We have one soulbind. We've just been talking about Nadia the Mistblade, but we also have Theodore the Mad Duke. If you wanted to, you could make Nadia the DPS soulbind. Let's say we set it up for just pure damage. And then we decide Theodore is going to be your healing soulbind. You want to be able to heal as a soulbind in Mythic Plus dungeons. Let's say you'll go with Lingering Numbness just so you can have slow to provide for your party. You can go with like Leisurely Gait so your Dorwich Shadows is instant cast so you can move out of mechanics faster. Let's say you go with a Lingering Numbness so you can slow enemies in Mythic Pluses. You get Transcendence to increase your movement speed, which is again great for getting out of bad situations. And you can go for Refined Palate, so potions can be stronger for mana. Fortified Brew for again an extra defensive in order to deal with mechanics and Mythic Pluses. These here don't really affect your combat orientation, so hey, maybe you want to transmog and not pay a thing. And then eventually they'll add an ability for this one. This one is getting changed quite a bit as Blizzard's trying to balance these stuff out. So you can kind of set up a soulbind for a healer, right? And I just learned it, and I have all the different passes available for it. The cool thing about these soulbinds is you set them up in Forge, right? You set up all these different abilities, like the conduits. You set them up at the Forge, but you can swap them around anytime you want to. So if I'm away from the Forge, I can just swap to Nadja, and now I can be a full-blown Windwalker, effective for, let's say, PvE Windwalking. But if I want to swap and do some Mythic Pluses, I already have Theater set up ahead of time. I swap it, and now I gain all the passive effects. So out in the open world, you can swap conduits anytime you like. So Blizzard gives you the capability to at least be able to swap them around for different types of content. Another thing that you will also notice is these all three soulbinds are kind of leaning towards one role or another, depending on how many of these potency conduits you have. Let's say as a DPS, you like being able to get the most amount of DPS out of your character, and potency conduits increase the DPS. Nadja has 1, 2, 3. So you would think that maybe as a character, especially with Thrill Seeker, she might be leaning more towards being friendly towards DPS. You can customize her and use her as a healer or as a tank, but she does have certain benefits that make you lean towards her if you are a Windwalker. Maybe Theater has certain abilities where you have 1 Finesse Conduit, 2 Finesse Conduits, 3 Finesse Conduits, which let's say could be very useful for a healer. And so this guy kind of leans towards more of this healer or support role. So most healers will be able to identify with Theater and some of the different conduits that they can apply, and some of the other benefits that maybe help healers. Or maybe you want to go with General Draven, who, if you will see, has 1 Endurance Conduit, or like a defensive glyph, 2nd Defensive Conduit, 3rd Defensive Conduit. So he kind of leans towards more tanks. He's more friendly towards tanks because of the ability to put up 3 different defensive bonuses for your character. However, you can play him as a Windwalker as well. So General Draven, while most tanks will look at his ability of, hey, get versatility, and gives other players versatility, which versatility increases your damage, but also decreases how much damage you take, is kind of an interesting ability. Maybe combined together with this ability, Hold Your Ground. Wow, as a tank, gains 10 stamina for standing still, because you're going to be standing still, tanking a lot of bosses, and having 4% more healing done as a Blood DK could be super useful as a tank. But you also could use this as a Windwalker as well. Just because this character leans towards tank abilities does not mean he solely needs to be a tank-based character. You could be a Windwalker that wants to, let's say, be very survivable. You want to be able to go into battlegrounds, or even 2v2s, and almost 2v1 against enemies. So you'll go with General Draven because of all these defensive bonuses, and you'll pick defensive bonuses to stay alive longer. So that could be something very interesting for a character to craft. So as a Windwalker, you could maybe have Nadja for dungeons and raids, and then Draven for PvP. And both of the soul conduits could be useful any way you slice it. Whether you're a healer trying to make a conduit for PvP, dungeons and raiding, or a tank that's trying to make a dungeon and, let's say, an off-spec Windwalker spec, or a Windwalker who wants to go all about damage in PvP, dungeons and raids, you can customize these soulbinds with the different conduits any way you want to. Okay, so we talked about different soulbinds. Now we're going to talk about conduits. So conduits, we have no idea how we're going to acquire them. Some of them are very simple, just flat damage increases. Others increase the value or proc chance of certain abilities, or enhance them in a variety of different ways. Some have defensive bonuses that are across multiple specs, and others are going to be spec specific. So right now we have no idea what Blizzard is going to do with them. All we have is a bunch of conduits for us to test and combine, as this system is still very much in its infancy, and we are to expect quite a lot of changes out of this particular system. Conduits are kind of cool because they allow you to customize your character. And what I like about them is there's certain conduits like this one right here. When paralysis ends, the target's movement speed is reduced by 60. There's a lot of non-spec specific conduits right now, so they can be used no matter what the spec is. It's just right now parsing them is kind of weird. So I definitely think Blizzard should do some sort of a UI element with conduits. Another thing is you can also stack conduits. So let's say you go with Nadja, you have a bunch of potency conduits and you're a Windwalker. You could technically stack a bunch of them to be 3 different Fists of Fury conduits. So this kind of promotes less diversity of different abilities, and I think maybe these abilities shouldn't be stackable. I think if you just have one soulbind that just does the most amount of damage for you, it'll be equivalent of having 3 of an Azure trait. It doesn't give your character a lot of creativity or diversity of abilities that you get to play with, Rather, it just has you stack one best conduit that increases your damage. I think the more variety of different passives we can play with, the better. So maybe Blizzard should make it so you can only have one of each conduit available for your character, or at least one per soulbind or something, right? What else I think Blizzard should do is, as you can see right now, if you were to replace a conduit somewhere in these abilities, for example, I have Naja right here. Let's say I wanted to replace one of the finesse conduits. So I'm going to take a healer conduit, just for fun. I'm going to put it in the DPS slot. When you replace, actually, it won't even let me, huh? Okay. Let's say I got coordinate offensive. This one I think will work. So when I try to replace Inner Fury, it actually gives me a prompt. Are you sure you want to replace this conduit? The existing conduit will be destroyed. So again, very much like Legion relic system from, well, back in Legion, it will replace the currently slotted conduit. So replacing it also means destroying it. So that means a player would need to go out and do whatever dungeon or raid, or whatever PvP experience they had to, maybe a different world quest, in order to re-earn that same conduit in case they want to bring it back. Conduits can only be replaced also at the Forge of Bonds. So what would be cool is maybe if you wanted to access your soulbinds, which you actually can from Covenant Sanctum button, and you can even change which one is active at a time, so you can activate them anytime out in the world. You're out in open PvP, you see a couple of lines, boom, you're ready for PvP. You're getting invited to a dungeon or raid, boom, you got Nigeria selected while inside of the raid. You're the most effective in dungeons right now. So that's kind of cool, so how you can interact with them without being anywhere close to the forge. What I think they should do is maybe if you pop a tome, you should also be able to change up your conduits from here. So let's say if I were to go for extra Fist of Fury damage here, I should be able to do it from out in the open world as long as there's a tome available. Because wouldn't it be cool if you could do that with your Azerite traits? Players have talked about Azerite traits and being able to change them from a tome for a while. I think that's definitely something Blizzard could add as well. Another question is, how do you earn these conduits? Well, right now we have no idea. Right now we have a vendor that kind of just gives them to us. I don't think Blizzard is still aware of how they want to do this. Maybe they'll do it just like relics, where you can earn them from PvP, you can earn them from Mythic Pluses, or certain dungeons, you can earn them from world events, world quests, world bosses, and maybe even raids, certain bosses inside of raids. But I think you're kind of going in the direction of essences, and this would be my recommendation. Some players want a PvE, but they don't really want to do arenas. But if you have the best, like in Battle for Azeroth, essence inside of arenas, well, it's kind of lame. And if let's say you want to just PvP, you want to grind you don't want to do dungeons, you want to grind BGs, you want to duel, want to go out in the open world, but to have to go do a raid in order to get your best essence for PvP seems kind of a little discouraging. I think Blizzard should maybe do some kind of a currency system. As you PvP, you accumulate a currency. As you do dungeons and raids, you accumulate a currency. And let's say you can buy these conduits with that currency. I know that Blizzard tries quite a bit, especially in BF8, to get people to get out of their comfort zone. And I'm a huge fan of that. That's how I started playing Mythic Pluses, and I like being able to do some PvP, dungeons, and raids in order to grow with my character. But some players are not a huge fan of that. So I think maybe they should consider adding some sort of a currency. By doing the regular stuff you like, you generate currency, like you do currently with your echoes. You do whatever content you like, you get echoes, and you use those echoes to buy essences. So maybe they could do something like this with this expansion as well. Do PvP, do dungeons and raids, do your favorite piece of content, get currency, and use that currency to buy these conduits in order to craft your character. I think something like this would be actually really cool, and I think Blizzard should definitely at least consider adding something like this into the game at a later time. But this is going to be the conduit system as we have right now in the alpha. It is quite an extensive system. One more advice for Blizzard I would have is, ask yourself, how do you explain this new systems to a brand new player? Or let's say somebody who hasn't played in a couple expansions and is coming back to World of Warcraft. You got to find a way to explain these systems to the point where it's succinct and it makes sense. So that might mean maybe simplifying parts of the system or doing some sort of quest line to truly explain exactly how it's supposed to be done. I think it used to be kind of organically learned by players. Because right now, diving into Battle for Azeroth, people diving into corruptions and cloaks, and oh, I gotta do cloaks through visions. But how do you get into visions? You gotta get coalescing currency. You get coalescing currency by doing assaults, and also don't forget you gotta do world quests in order to get AP, but also do islands to get AP to get your neck up and running. And then there's essences. How do you get essences? And it's just quite a lot for people to deal with. And I think Blizzard needs to figure out if they can do this system without really having to get players to make YouTube videos and all these systems, to make all these guides, then I think they'll nail this, right? If we can have, the easier it is for us to explain what this system is, the easier it is for Blizzard to explain what the system is. So I think that's definitely something that should be a focal point for them going forward into this expansion. These systems are cool, but you gotta find a way to either simplify them to the point where they can be easier explained, or you gotta find a way to present a quest line, maybe, or something along those lines in order to explain this in depth so a player isn't confused. Because this is a lot of cool systems, but a brand new player that's never played World of Warcraft, this is gonna be quite a lot for them to learn. Anyway, thank you guys so much for checking out this video. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.